Hello, this is Vivica Williams, and you're watching Head to Head. Ukraine has had an eventful year when it comes to its foreign policy, and everything from having new sanctions imposed against Russia to increasing the number of countries to which its citizens can travel visa-free. To talk about the year in review for Ukraine's foreign policy, we're joined in the studio today by Maksym Yakovlyev, Director of the School of Policy Analysis at the National University of Kyiv-Mohyla Academy. Maksym, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, so first off, let's start with some of the most things that have worked out the best for Ukraine when it comes to its foreign policy.
I think the sanction regime against Russia, both by our European partners and by the United States, are really positively surprising, because we discussed this very much in this country. We're still discussing, especially with the populism on the rise in many European countries, like, for example, Italy, if the sanctions be lifted or if they might be lifted in the future. But we can see that our European partners work together with us, and they understand that Russia poses a very particular threat, not only to Ukraine, because Ukraine is on the front line against Russia, protecting our values and identities, and it is also very important for the European Union. And I'm really grateful to our European colleagues that they also have this understanding why sanctions are really needed, why it's important to show Russia that some things, some rules should be obeyed, some behavior is really not acceptable. And I think this is a very positive thing, that sanctions are not lifted, they are still there, and the European Union decided to prolong them. The Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe and the Russian delegation and their participation in it is also under question, because they're not participating, even though it was also heavily discussed if the Russians might return to join this structure. So all in all, I think this is the positive side, and I'm really grateful that our foreign partners support us and understand the threat that Russia poses to the world.
And Ukraine has also seen some successes in the Security Council at the UN as well, in the reception of its resolution versus Russia attempting to push through its own, agendas. Yeah.
Yes, I do agree with you, and it's very important because many countries, not only Ukraine, is discussing the format of the Security Council, because many say that it's really outdated, not only old-fashioned, but there are very powerful actors, like, let's say, Germany. We don't understand the outcomes of the Second World War, but the world has changed dramatically, and maybe we can, enlarge it, or maybe we can change the rules, because the world is not as it used to be after the Second World War. So there are many things to change, and I also. In that respect, we as Ukrainians are really grateful to our serious, so to speak, foreign partners like the United Kingdom, and that all these stories with espionage and Skripal's case, they also helped our cause, so to speak. And then the relationship with the United States, with Russia, and even though we all discuss this thing that Trump has this very particular psychological attitude
towards dictators or authoritarian figures in general.
And maybe some fascination.
We've seen that the U.S. Congress has been very adamant and secure in what they state on this case with Russia.
True, and what I read, I'm not a very good expert on American policies and politics inside, but what we hear from our European partners, and this is very discussed, that for Trump, both saying yes to Putin and lifting the sanctions and showing his weakness would not be accepted by the both poles of the political spectrum in the United States. So he is like caught in a certain position in which the United States have no right to show their weakness and saying that Russia can do whatever they want. So this is also plays and contributes to our cause.
Absolutely. And not just with sanctions, what are some of the other major things? Maybe some even are there less noticed achievements of Ukraine for the year when it comes to foreign policy?
I think the culture of diplomacy, with this Ukraine Now,
this has been a very big
True. I like it. First, we Ukrainians are always very skeptical when it comes to discussing what the state money, the budget money was spent on, and all this was this money really used for some good? But all in all, I like it, especially when I see it abroad. For example, Ukrainian Leadership Academy, the guys and girls are now in Israel, and I see the pictures with Ukraine Now. It's very symbolic. So it's a great contribution. Secondly, I think abroad what we hear less, but is also one of our achievements, that so many Ukrainians can travel abroad, and this is visa-free travel, which is very important.
Absolutely.
So people come face to face in contact with Ukrainians, and because we have to admit we were like kind of a locked country. We're getting a visa with the troublesome, it was red tape a lot. And so when people contact and travel abroad, both for Ukrainians, it is a huge advance. You can travel and see the world, especially the European countries. And both Europeans, that they can see that we are not some savages living almost in Siberia, let's say.
Everyone's a criminal and
exactly. And we all, what we do is only like ship prostitutes to Europe, which is what Russian propaganda says. And we can see, if I may use this very bad word, but the Russian, especially if you watch Russian talk show, they're really pissed off that the Ukrainians have this right to travel visa-free.
Which they do not. Right, exactly. And so and we see, so this is good. Ukraine has gotten better this year at promoting itself, promoting the country and the benefits that it provides. And because we just unfortunately have so little time, let's talk a little bit about some of the setbacks or the things that haven't worked out so well.
I think Nord Stream project, this gas pipeline that Russia is building together with Germany, it was a huge disappointment, and it is still a disappointment, not only to Ukraine, but to many Central and Eastern European countries, especially Baltic states and Poland also support our cause, saying that this is not a good idea, actually. So this, when the conflict comes between values and the economy, because we know that money is probably the root of all evil.
As the saying goes, absolutely.
Yes, as the saying goes. But we have to admit that this was a kind of drawback, and Germany acted a bit disappointing at times, especially with this particular case. Secondly, the Russian aggression and all this story with our military ships in Kerch Strait, it is also a disappointment from Russian side, but on the other hand, Russians really showed their aggressive nature in terms of military behavior, and also some dishonesty in behavior. When you take, these soldiers are not treated, sailors, sorry, they're not treated as prisoners of war, but they are criminals because they kind of violated the Russian border, which is also a dishonest attitude.
And we're going to have to see how that works out, because it may be, I mean, this is just really coming to the point where this term is being used more and more. And we're going to have to see in the new year, hopefully we can hope that in the new year they'll be home for Christmas, Orthodox Christmas. And in the meantime, there's pressure to push for that designation as prisoners of war and treatment as such. And unfortunately, we have only a couple more seconds. So if you could just say maybe in a word what we have to look forward to next year from Ukraine.
Elections. This is the top word, but elections, but hopefully the foreign policy direction of Ukraine is not going to change. And despite all the things, I always say that compared even to our countries and our neighboring countries, we're going to elect the 6th president. Many countries like Belarus, they have no idea what it is like to elect a new president. In Russia, there is so little change. So we are going to have a very active year with at least 2 elections and local levels elections. So it is going to be at least not boring.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us, Maksym.
Thank you for inviting me.
And that was Maksym Yakovlyev, Director of the School for Policy Analysis at the National University of Kyiv-Mohyla Academy. Thank you for watching UATV, and stay tuned for more.